Hello and welcome to Creative Edmo. If you're here for the first time, please subscribe. So today we are going to discuss a very interesting story with quite an unexpected twist in the end. The story is A Letter to God. You'll find line by line explanation of the entire story in this video. I'll also discuss all the difficult words and important questions. So let's begin. The house, the only one in the entire valley, sat on the crest of a low hill. So the first line paints a picture of the house. The first thing is it is an isolated house. It is the only one in the entire valley. Crest means top of a hill. So the house is situated on the crest of a low hill. I have included a picture here to help you imagine. Hill is quite small as compared to a mountain. So there's a low hill and on top of it is the house. From this height, one could see the river and the field of ripe corn dotted with the flowers that always promised a good harvest. So from there, one could see the river, the field of ripe corn. Dotted with the flowers means it had many flowers all over the surface. The field was covered with flowers, and this meant that there would be a good harvest. Harvest means the season's crop or yield. The only thing the earth needed was a downpour or at least a shower. Downpour means heavy rainfall. Throughout the morning, Lencho, now Lencho is the protagonist of the story. Protagonist means main character. So throughout the morning, Lencho, who knew his fields intimately, had done nothing else but see the sky towards the northeast. Knew his fields intimately means he knew his fields closely. He had detailed knowledge about it. So this shows that Lencho was a good farmer who knew all about his fields. So he knew that for his crop to be successful, it needed rain. That's why he was looking at the sky for signs of clouds or rain. Now we are really going to get some water, woman. Notice how he calls his wife as woman and not by her name, like how people used to call in villages earlier. Also, it shows that Lencho saw some hope in the sky. He was sure that it would rain soon. The woman who was preparing supper replied, "Yes, God willing." In English stories, often the word supper is used instead of dinner. It means the last meal of the day. The phrase God willing tells us that this family believed in God. The older boys were working in the field while the smaller ones were playing near the house until the woman called to them all, "Come for dinner." So Lencho's wife calls all the children for dinner. It was during the meal that just as Lencho had predicted, big drops of rain began to fall. Predicted means to say that something will happen in the future. So just as Lencho had predicted that rain would come, big drops of rain began to fall. In the northeast, huge mountains of clouds could be seen approaching. Huge means big. Huge mountains of clouds means a lot of clouds had gathered there and they looked like huge mountains. And those clouds were approaching. Approaching means coming nearer. The air was fresh and sweet. When the rain begins, often there is a sweet aroma of the earth. Aroma means pleasant smell. We all love to go out and take that fresh whiff of air. So in the same way, the man went out for no other reason than to have the pleasure of feeling the rain on his body. And when he returned, he exclaimed, "These aren't raindrops falling from the sky. They are new coins. The big drops are 10-cent pieces and the little ones are 5." Now this story is set in one of the countries of Latin America. There the currency is peso, and how we have paise, they have cents. I have included pictures of cents and peso here. So Lencho compares the raindrops falling from the sky to coins, new coins. He compares big raindrops to 10 cents and the little raindrops to 5 cents. Now why does he make this comparison? Very important question. You know how important rains are to a farmer. So rain would ensure a good harvest for Lencho's cornfield. That's why raindrops were like coins to him, which would bring him wealth and prosperity just like coins. Also, raindrops look like coins too, round, shiny and precious, at least to a farmer, isn't it? So I have included this answer in the video too. Watch till the end if you want the answers to all the important questions of this chapter. With a satisfied expression, he regarded the field of ripe corn with its flowers draped in a curtain of rain. Lencho is satisfied because he is happy that rain would ensure a good harvest. Now look at the beauty of language here. The field is draped in a curtain of rain. To drape means to cover with cloth. So the field looked as if it was covered with a curtain made of raindrops. Try imagining it in your mind as you read. That way you will enjoy the story. Now comes a twist in the story. But suddenly, a strong wind began to blow, and along with the rain, very large hailstones began to fall. These truly did resemble new silver coins. Resemble means look like silver coins. The boys, exposing themselves to the rain, ran out to collect the frozen pearls. Now look at the irony here. Ironic situation is strange, funny or amusing because it is the opposite of what is expected. Now Lencho had just called raindrops as coins, but now came the hailstones and they actually did look like silver coins and the boys collected them as frozen pearls. But they do not make Lencho happy because hail would destroy his crop. So even though hailstones looked like coins and pearls, but they would not bring any wealth to Lencho as the raindrops would have. Now also notice, when raindrops came, Lencho came out. When hailstones came, boys ran out. I am sure you must have collected hailstones when you were a child. At least I did. Sweet memories of childhood, isn't it? Okay, so back to our story. It's really getting bad now, exclaimed the man. The man here is Lencho. I hope it passes quickly. But it did not pass quickly. For an hour the hail rained on the house, the garden, the hillside, the cornfield, on the whole valley. The field was white, as if covered with salt. Not a leaf remained on the trees. The corn was totally destroyed. The flowers were gone from the plants. Lencho's soul was filled with sadness. Earlier, the field draped in a curtain of rain made him happy. And now the field was white, as if covered with salt. Remember this comparison, very important. Now his corn was totally destroyed and it filled him with sadness. Notice the change in Lencho's situation. It's an important question. I have given its answer later in the video. When the storm had passed, he stood in the middle of the field and said to his sons, "A plague of locusts would have left more than this. The hail has left nothing." A plague of locusts means a group of locusts. Here's a picture of locusts. It's an insect. It attacks and destroys crops. Now such is the extent of destruction of corn crop by hail that Lencho compares it to an attack by locusts. He feels that even locusts would have left more crop than this. This year we'll have no corn. That night was a sorrowful one. Sorrowful means full of sadness. All our work for nothing. Farmers have to work really hard and now all that work had gone down the drain. Nothing can be worse to a farmer than the destruction of his crop. There's no one who can help us. We'll all go hungry this year. So Lencho's mood is full of sadness now. He's dejected, depressed and gloomy. All these words imply sadness. He's feeling hopeless, helpless, anxious, that is worried. Now time for some questions. Now I have already discussed these questions while explaining the story, so I'll quickly go through them. If you want, you can pause the video here. So what did Lencho hope for? Lencho hoped for rain so that he could get a good harvest of his corn crop. Next, why did Lencho say the raindrops were like new coins? Lencho compares the raindrops falling from the sky to new coins because rain would ensure a good harvest for Lencho's corn crop. Hence, raindrops would bring him wealth and prosperity just like coins. How did the rain change? What happened to Lencho's fields? Suddenly, a strong wind began to blow and along with the rain, very large hailstones began to fall. Lencho's field was completely destroyed by hailstones. You can also write the field looked white as if covered with salt. What were Lencho's feelings when the hail stopped? Lencho's soul was filled with sadness. He lamented the loss of his crop and felt helpless. To lament means to express your sadness or disappointment. You can also write he was dejected, depressed, gloomy, anxious, worried. All these words imply sadness. Anxious means worried. Okay. So let's continue with our story. But in the hearts of all who lived in that solitary house in the middle of the valley, there was a single hope: help from God. Solitary house. If you remember the first line, it talked about his house being the only one in the valley. So it's an isolated house. No other houses are there. Don't be so upset, even though this seems like a total loss. Remember, no one dies of hunger. So his wife tries to console him to keep his spirits up. That's what they say. No one dies of hunger. But of course, it's not true. People do die of hunger, and that's what worried Lencho. All through the night, Lencho thought only of his one hope, the help of God, whose eyes, as he had been instructed, see everything, even what is deep in one's conscience. The word conscience normally means your sense of right or wrong, your moral compass. But conscience here refers to his inner thoughts or feelings. So Lencho knew that God could see what was going on in his mind. Lencho had been instructed that God's eyes see everything. Had been instructed refers to the religious upbringing that Lencho got from his parents. So it's a family of believers, theists. Theist is a person who believes in God. Theist, theist. Lencho was an ox of a man, working like an animal in the fields, but still he knew how to write. Ox of a man. This phrase implies that Lencho was physically strong, like an ox. Ox, as you know, is a strong animal, and Lencho could really work hard in the fields. In a village of those times, all these things would imply that perhaps he's an illiterate farmer who knows only to work like an animal in the fields, who doesn't know how to read or write. But in case of Lencho, he knew how to write. So he was different from other farmers. The following Sunday at daybreak, he began to write a letter which he himself would carry to town and place in the mail. And because it was such an important letter, so he wanted to place it in the mail himself. It was nothing less than a letter to God. So now comes the main part of the story, the part on which the title of the story is based, a letter to God written by Lencho. God, he wrote, if you don't help me, my family and I will go hungry this year. I need 100 pesos in order to sow my field again and to live until the crop comes because the hailstorm, dot, dot, dot. So these dots imply that Lencho goes on to write the entire story of how his crops got destroyed because of the hailstorm. He wrote to God on the envelope, put the letter inside, and still troubled went to town. At the post office, he placed a stamp on the letter and dropped it into the mailbox. So he finished writing the letter, and instead of address, he just wrote to God. So now what does this tell us about Lencho's character? Very important question. Please listen carefully. He is naive. Naive means innocent, simple, inexperienced. And he has an immense faith in the generosity of God. Immense means great or very large. Generosity means quality of being kind and generous. Generous means someone who is willing to give, often more than what is needed. So Lencho believes that God would grant him what he is asking. And what is he asking? 100 pesos. So he has a childlike belief in God, an unflinching faith in God, an unshakable belief in God. That is, he has a lot of faith in God. So what happens to that letter? One of the employees, who was a postman and also helped at the post office, went to his boss laughing heartily and showed him the letter to God. Never in his career as a postman had he known that address. So when the postman reads to God written on the envelope, he is amused. That is, he finds it funny. Why? Obviously because he had never seen anyone address a letter to God. So the postman shows the letter to his boss because he thinks he would find it funny too. The postmaster, a fat, amiable fellow. Now the next important character has been introduced in the story, the postmaster. Physically, he is fat, so quite the opposite of Lencho, isn't it? Lencho is an ox of a man working hard in the fields. The postmaster is fat, has a sedentary job, that is a desk job, a sitting job. So I'm giving this comparison because these are the two important characters in the story. The postmaster is amiable, that is, he is friendly and pleasant. The postmaster, a fat, amiable fellow, also broke out laughing, but almost immediately he turned serious and tapping the letter on his desk commented, "What faith! I wish I had the faith of the man who wrote this letter." So first, the postmaster too joins the postman in laughing. But then, as he reads the letter, he finds himself quite impressed by the faith of the man who wrote the letter. He envies Lencho. To envy someone means to wish to have a thing or quality that the other person has. So the postmaster wishes to have faith like that of Lencho. Starting up a correspondence with God. Correspondence means written communication. So he admires the confidence of Lencho. So in order not to shake the writer's faith in God, the postmaster came up with an idea. Answer the letter. But when he opened it, it was quite evident that to answer it, he needed something more than goodwill, ink and paper. Now the postmaster decides to reply to that letter so that the writer of the letter, that is Lencho, could continue believing in God. But we know that Lencho asked for 100 pesos. So that means the postmaster needed more than goodwill, ink and paper. He needed 100 pesos to give to Lencho. But he stuck to his resolution. What is resolution? It is a firm decision, like how you definitely decide to do something, like how you make New Year resolutions. I'll do this, I'll do that. Whether you stick to those resolutions or not, that I don't know. But in this case, the postmaster decided to stick to his resolution. And what was the resolution? To answer that letter. So he asked for money from his employees, he himself gave part of his salary, and several friends of his were obliged to give something for an act of charity. Feel obliged to give means to feel like you have a duty to give, like feeling bound by ethics or politeness. So some friends perhaps really didn't want to give, but they felt obliged since their friend, the postmaster, was asking them to donate for this charity so that the faith of a man could be saved. So did the postmaster succeed? It was impossible for him to gather together the 100 pesos. So he was able to send the farmer only a little more than half. He put the money in an envelope addressed to Lencho and with it a letter containing only a single word as a signature, God. Now time for some questions. I'll quickly go through them because we have already discussed it in detail. Who or what did Lencho have faith in? What did he do? Lencho had immense faith in the generosity of God. He wrote a letter to God asking for 100 pesos. Who read the letter? The postmaster read the letter. What did the postmaster do then? He decided to answer the letter. And how could he answer that letter? What did he do for it? He started collecting money for Lencho. He asked for money from his employees and friends. He donated a part of his salary too, but even then he could collect only a little more than half the amount Lencho had asked for. He put all that money in an envelope addressed to Lencho and signed the letter as God. The following Sunday, Lencho came a bit earlier than usual to ask if there was a letter for him. Now look at Lencho's confidence. He is so sure that God would have replied that he comes to inquire himself. It was the postman himself who handed the letter to him while the postmaster, experiencing the contentment means satisfaction, experiencing the contentment of a man who has performed a good deed, looked on from his office. Deed means action. So when you do something good for others, especially charity, you feel a sense of happiness, contentment, satisfaction for doing something noble. And that's what the postmaster was feeling. Now let's see what happens when Lencho opens the letter. Lencho showed not the slightest surprise on seeing the money. Such was his confidence. But he became angry when he counted the money. Now look at how naive Lencho is. It's like he really believes that God sent the money. Not only that, he is suspicious now that why did he receive less than 100 pesos? God could not have made a mistake, nor could he have denied Lencho what he had requested. Now Lencho feels sure that God couldn't have made a mistake of sending less than 100 pesos. He is also sure that God could not have refused or denied what he had asked, that is 100 pesos. Immediately, Lencho went up to the window to ask for paper and ink. Went up to the window means imagine a post office. So there's a desk and window, and behind it sits the officials of post office. So he went up to that window, and often there's a table there also which people use for writing. You must have seen this in banks also in case you have ever visited one. So on the public writing table, he started to write with much wrinkling of his brow caused by the effort he had to make to express his ideas. Now, brow is his eyebrow. Wrinkling of brow occurs when you're angry, agitated, disappointed, or when you're trying to concentrate on something, isn't it? So when he finished, he went to the window to buy a stamp which he licked and then affixed to the envelope with a blow of his fist. Blow of fist. Fist is when you close your hand, and blow of fist is banging on the envelope so that stamp sticks. But this phrase also conveys his anger. When someone is angry, he or she does things loudly, isn't it? Like slamming doors, banging on the table. So the same way he did it with a blow of his fist. The moment the letter fell into the mailbox, the postmaster went to open it. Now the postmaster was quite curious. He wanted to know what happened. Now what was the postmaster expecting? Perhaps he expected words of gratitude towards God. Gratitude means being thankful. So he thought Lencho would be happy to get the money, and he would write something good, which will in turn make the postmaster feel good about himself, because in fact he did put in a lot of effort to collect that money for Lencho. But let's see what actually happens. It said, God, of the money that I asked for, only 70 pesos reached me. Send me the rest, since I need it very much. But don't send it to me through the mail, because the post office employees are a bunch of crooks. Lencho. And the story ends here with this amusing climax. Or should we say anticlimax? Anticlimax is when you get the opposite of what the end should have been. So the real angel, the postmaster who collected money by asking people, he ended up being labeled a crook by Lencho. Lencho, who had so much faith in God and so little in the goodness of humans. Not once it occurred to him that how could God send the money? Not once he thought that perhaps someone at the post office helped him. Instead, he accused them of taking his 30 pesos because he's so sure that God would have sent him the 100 pesos, and these bunch of crooks took 30 out and left 70 for him. Crook means a dishonest person. Now they say that faith can move mountains, but what should we put our faith in? This is a question that this story delicately poses. Lencho chooses to believe in invisible God, but refuses to believe that some human could have helped him after reading the letter as the logic dictates. Instead, he ends up accusing his helper as a crook. And herein lies the irony of the story. So did you enjoy this video? Please do reply in comment section, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe to Creative Edmo. Now let's discuss some more questions. Was Lencho surprised to find a letter for him with money in it? No, he wasn't. What made him angry? He was angry because letter contained only 70 pesos, and he was convinced that the post office employees stole the remaining 30 pesos. Why does the postmaster send money to Lencho? Why does he sign the letter God? The postmaster sent the money to Lencho because he didn't want to shake Lencho's faith in God. He wanted Lencho to continue believing in God. That's why he signed the letter as God. Did Lencho try to find out who had sent the money to him? Why or why not? No, he didn't try to find out who had sent the money to him because his unquestioning faith in God convinced him that God would send him the money. Such was the strength of his belief in God that not once he suspected that someone else could have sent the money. Who does Lencho think has taken the rest of the money? What is the irony in the situation? Remember that the irony of a situation is an unexpected aspect of it. An ironic situation is strange or amusing because it is the opposite of what is expected. Lencho thinks that the post office employees have taken the rest of the money. The irony of the situation is that the people who helped him ended up being labeled as crooks by Lencho. The poor postmaster, who was feeling a sense of contentment for having done a noble deed, must have been in quite a shock after reading the second letter of Lencho. So I hope this chapter is clear to you. Please don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe. Do watch other videos of class 10th too. Links have been given in the description box below. Thank you and have a nice day.